Yes, sir.
I've never heard of you prior to this day, and I'm really happy that you describe your vision as open source education. I'm wondering, and this might be a bit controversial, many of us, I think in this room are involved in the open source technology movement, and obviously the open source technology movement, I think in its most cerebral way, is very much fueled by the psychedelic experience and by psychedelic drugs. And I think for a lot of people, I remember the day in 2004 when I was sitting with a friend who was under the influence of LSD. I remember the night that I began the thought process that made me realize that I didn't need government, and has, by extension, made me have new thoughts about education. So where do you see the psychedelic mind in the future paradigm of education?
That's a question which, of necessity, I'm going to duck. Now, I was warned to be very slow about turning from one side of the room to the other. I'll be glad to discuss that with you.
I was going to add, I don't know who asked the previous question, but I have a two-part answer. I don't with respect to doctors, but I sat next to a gal one time who was a lawyer. She did not have an undergrad degree and dropped out of law school and took the bar and passed it and practices law in California currently. And I'm an airline pilot, which is one of the other of the big three, and I don't have an accredited high school diploma or a college degree. So these things are possible if you have the motivation and wiggle room to figure out how to do them. So that's an answer for you.
Well, thank you. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What's your advice for dealing with the rage and grief that come when you realize how much of your own life has been?
Yeah.
I'm set. What's the advice for when you discover for your own life? I'm 75 and I'm still discovering indwelling curiosity cutoffs, to use anyway, to borrow somebody's expression. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Who's that guy? Ken Kesey. I'm discovering these curiosity cutoffs that were planted long ago, and I'm ripping them out, and just when I think I'm totally free, I'll find another. You start where you are, and you don't have to do much work in this area before your life seems to be lighter, much better there. Even if you have a long way to go, you start where you are, for sure. And you don't despair ever. For us Jesuits, that's the biggest sin. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. How do you explain the way you feel about education to regular people, whereas like your philosophy, and I can say I was kind of on board with your philosophy a lot sooner than I read your books, because I went to a vocational high school and had an unusual experience with education. And in this state now, we have a recent law where students can't drop out of school and have to stay in school by law until the age of 18, so they're unable to even drop out and do some alternative education in high school, which I think is cruel. I think that's the only word I can come up with, because many kids shouldn't be there. And how do you explain the fact that your ideas about alternative education are actually compassionate? Because a lot of people think the only way to be compassionate to kids and their education needs is to hold them in the same school.
I had the good fortune to grow up in the realest part of the United States I've ever seen. Western Pennsylvania, along the West Virginia border, during the Second World War, was my growing up time. There were people from all over the earth there, and the idiom of that zone of the country was absolute plain talk, and the advice, if you got insulted, was to strike back with maximum force, none of this graduated force. As a consequence, people from all over the earth, people with all kinds of economic differences, were polite and cordial to one another, because the alternative was to get into a fist fight right away.